Guys, and welcome to the channel. If you're new, don't be.
I'm Whitney.
What up, everybody? Welcome to Whitney D TV. It's just better here. Make sure you place your city and or state in the chat so I can see where you're tuning in from, okay? And make sure that you keep it cute or you will get the boot, okay? Yes, this is the home of keep it cute or get the boot. Now, that means you do not have to agree with everything that I'm stating, but make sure that you keep it respectful, okay? If not, my Katie mod will make sure you do so, okay? Now, let me tell you a little bit about Katie, all right? If she's in here, what up, Katie? Not for nothing. She will place eye emojis in the chat to let you know that I see what you're saying and what you're doing, okay? That's warning number one. Two, she will place these little water pistols in there to let you know, I'm finna get you, okay? She'll then proceed to place you on time out, and if you continue, you will get the boot, okay? Now, I don't want that, so keep it cute or get the boot, all right? Not for nothing, make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and make sure that you like this video or dislike it. Either way, I'm grateful. Now, if you got information or you got a laugh, make sure you share this video. Sharing is caring. Now, if you would like to join the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description box, or look up top in the pinned location and you will see the link there as well. You can support me on a month-to-month basis by doing so, okay? And it's highly appreciated. Now, if you would like to support me right now, you can do so by sending me a super chat or a cash app. If nothing more, thank you. And let's get into the show. Chapter 7. Go to your mailbox. The first Friday in February 2002, I planned to spend a long day working at home, powering through on 4 cups of coffee after taking my 5-year-old daughter to preschool. I spent the morning transcribing a phone interview with neo-soul singer Alicia Keys, who was returning to Chicago on a tour stop supporting her phenomenally successful debut, Songs in A Minor. There's always those two sides, Keys said when I asked about the mix of praise and criticism she'd gotten for talking about how hip-hop sometimes disrespects women. I just feel it's time to show people how beautiful a woman is and how much she's worth and how much she would be respected. There's so much more than what's kind of become the cliche of women in music. As a pop music critic at the Chicago Sun-Times, I spend a lot of my time writing feature previews of artists coming to town, as well as reviewing their shows. For important national or high-profile local artists, I work longer features for the Sunday paper, as well as reviewing albums every Sunday and sometimes on Tuesdays when an especially anticipated release arrived in stores. I wrote obituaries of the greats on deadline. James Brown delayed my daughter opening her presents for a few hours on Christmas morning. 2006, and I reported or wrote commentary on news stories on my beat. From a stampede at the E2 nightclub on the South Side that left 21 people dead in 2003, to the corporate merger of Ticketmaster and concert promoters Live Nation, which sent the price of tickets soaring. Investigative stories about R.Kelly added to the unusual workload for both legal affairs reporter Abdon Plashk and me. Rare was the week when each of us didn't have half a dozen bylines on our respective beats. But sometimes you choose your stories and sometimes they choose you. After I transcribed the Keys interview, I wrote and filed the feature to run before her show at the Southside's Irie Crown Theater. Then I dove into transcribing another phoner with Scotty Moore, the guitarist who'd been a sideman and on the best recordings by Elvis Presley. My job was nothing if not musically diverse. I planned to get a jump on the deadline for writing that column when the phone rang. Annoyed and eager to be done for the day, I answered in practice harried journalist dungeon. Jim DeRoga's, "Go to your mailbox," a gruff baritone commanded, then hung up. I already expected and dreaded what I'd find. Frustrated that we hadn't been able to nail all the facts about R.Kelly and the girl he called his goddaughter, Rashonda Landfair. The first story Abdul Palash and I published in the Sun-Times a few days before Christmas 2000 made no mention of that relationship. Only one sentence even hinted at its existence. Chicago police twice have investigated allegations that Kelly was having sex with an underage female, but dropped the investigations because the girl would not cooperate. 6 weeks after the first story read, Abdul and I each got a letter CC to editor Michael Cook, as well as the paper's media attorney, Damon Dunn, writing on behalf of his clients, Greg and Valerie Landfair, and their daughter, Rashonda. Chicago lawyer Daniel H. Tucci cited that one sentence: "The natural and obvious implications are false and defamatory. The fact that the Landfairs are not identified by name in your article makes no difference. It is well known in their community that Robert Kelly is a close friend. Damon is hereby made upon you to immediately cease and desist." Oh, demand. My bad, y'all. Demand is hereby made upon you to immediately cease and desist. The letter mentioned Rashonda's name 4 times and misspelled it twice. Rather than worry anyone at the paper, we thought the letter confirmed we'd been on to something. Kelly himself never threatened to sue the paper for any story Abdul and I wrote. Ultimately, we would share 33 bylines between 2000 and 2008, and his camp never even demanded a correction or a clarification. We didn't learn anything else about Kelly's relationship with Rashonda until shortly before the next Christmas. On December 19, 2001, the Kelly story had a way of ruining my holidays. Sparkle called me this time, her voice shaking and fraught with emotion. Now, when you talked to me last year, I couldn't say anything, but I've since gotten proof this is not a rumor. This is something that I totally seen with my eyes. I got a phone call on Friday stating that there was a tape surfacing with my niece. And I know you can't publish minors' names, but I was just like, okay, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? So 2 of my friends actually viewed the tape and know my family personally, so they knew it was my niece. During my reporting a year earlier, Sparkle hadn't said much when I connected with her through a Motown Records published and asked about the relationship between Kelly and her niece, Rashonda. I'm not her parents or whatever. Now, she continued, a man had come to her apartment claiming to represent a Chicago attorney named Buddy Myers. He gave her the lawyer's card and then he showed her a videotape. What she saw left her disgusted, horrified, and enraged. She said the man left with the tape and she didn't hear from him again. But She began making phone calls, telling people what she'd seen. She asked her brother to call their sister. Sparkle had been estranged from Valerie and Greg Lanfair since she told them to keep their daughter away from the star after she split with him. Next, Sparkle called the Illinois State's Attorney's Office. She didn't know exactly who to ask for and wound up talking to the Deputy Supervisor of Felony Review. She took notes during these calls and she carefully spelled the name of the man, Robert Hellingoterier. Years later, I talked to Hellingoterier, now retired. I worked murder cases, not sex crimes, but I took Sparkle's cold call. I remember she was speaking very cryptically. Well, what if I had this? And what if I had that? And can't you do something without it? And I'm like, well, if what you're saying is true, you have to come forward and we'd have to see this tape. Next, Sparkle called the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, where she spoke to a woman named Kim. She didn't catch her last name. Kim told Sparkle the same thing. The office could only act if it had a copy of the tape. Finally, Sparkle called me. At first, I thought she might have seen the first tape that had, been sent to the Sun-Times via FedEx 11 months earlier, but she described a much longer and more disturbing video. She believed her now 17-year-old niece, Rashonda, appeared in the scene with Kelly when she was 14, based on her hairstyle at the time. The horrible thing about this tape is he's doing things to her that I know it had to have been going on for a long time. The most demeaning thing on the tape is that he's pissing in her mouth. And excuse my language, nutting in her mouth, telling her to pucker up her lips. She's a young girl, so he's just brainwashed her to death. Something needs to be done. I called William Buddy Myers first thing the next morning. I have no idea why they threw my name around. I'm not involved with R.Kelly right now or anybody connected with R.Kelly right now. The attorney kept a low public profile. Abdom said, though, Myers also had been one of the owners of the Chicago Bulls American Hockey League. Team since its inception. Sparkle told me she believed that whether or not the man who showed her the tape was connected to Myers, he did it to confirm the girl was Rashonda and that she'd been underage in the clip. Probably so he could blackmail Kelly. Now, the way Myers said those last two words right now prompted me to keep questioning. Have you ever represented anyone connected to Kelly? Will you? Do you have a videotape of Kelly in your office? Have you seen one? I don't have a videotape. I've got some people I've talked to briefly, but nothing further. Right now, my firm has not been engaged with anybody having anything to do with R.Kelly. I've heard some shuttle, but that's all I've at liberty to say right now. Through the holidays and into the new year, Abdom and I called all the sources we developed as of the first week of January 2002. None of them had yet seen a tape with Rashonda, though several had heard about a new video on the streets. We agreed with city editor Don Hayner. We didn't have a story yet because we didn't have the tape, but we kept making calls. Then a month later, somebody called me. Go to your mailbox. I went to the mailbox beside the front door of the house. I'd only recently purchased a Grace Street on Chicago's northwest side and found an unmarked VHS cassette in a blank manila envelope. You have to be accessible if you are a journalist. And even after the bullet through the window on Ashland Avenue, I made sure my home office number and address were listed. I ran upstairs to my daughter's bedroom, popped Toy Story 2 out of the VCR, put the unmarked tape in, tossed her beloved Jessie doll aside so I could sit on the edge of what she called her big girl bed and hit play. The 26-minute, 39-second video seemed to have been shot in the same location as the first short tape we received. In the room with the rough hue, light-colored beams, Abdom and I had since learned that some members of Kelly's crew called it the Colorado Room, though most refer to it as the log cabin playroom. It was located in the converted Baptist church he owned on George Street. More of the room could be seen in this new tape, including a huge pine paneled hot tub. The video lacked a timestamp, but we later concluded it was made sometime in the late 1998 or early 1999. Possibly around the holidays, an unseen television played in the background tuned to a new music video program. Let's Have a Party Tonight by the Backstreet Boys and Too Much by the Spice Girls could be heard. Both big hits at the time, and the station aired a commercial for the Money Store, a lender specializing in subprime home home equity loans that had stopped using that name about 6 months after its sale in June 1998. Much clearer and longer than the tape from FedEx or the bootleg clip with the legal age dancer, Montina Woods. This video started with a man I immediately recognized as Kelly sitting on a cushioned bench beside the hot tub, dressed in red sweatpants and a white t-shirt, seemingly checking the angle of an unseen camera. The tape cut out for a second, then returned as the man handed something. I couldn't initially see what to a fully dressed, big-breasted, short-haired girl with round chipmunk cheeks. I thought I recognized her, too, from the Oak Park and River Forest High School yearbook pictures. Adam had photocopied more than a year earlier. It was Rashonda Landfair. Thank you. Thank you, she muttered before she performed fellatio on Kelly, occasionally shooting glances at the camera. The video cut out again, then came back as she danced for him in atop the ledge of the hot tub, following his directions. Dance faster, baby. Now naked, except for a big silver cross across her neck. At his prompting, she urinated on the floor outside the hot tub, then straddled him as he sat on the bench and they had intercourse. Seemingly double her size, he called her Shonda, and she called him Daddy. Daddy, fuck you? He asked. Yes, Daddy, she said. The girl's eyes had a vacant, disembodied look as she robotically followed Kelly's commands, and her expression showed no signs of pleasure or any emotion that mattered.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high.
Nope. This ain't it. You are tuned into a realistic, unprofessional perspective reading of this book. So that means stumbles, fumbles, and sometimes an occasional mispronunciation of words. So if you are looking for the audible of this book, go buy it yourself. Or feel free to mute me and read on your own. Otherwise, sit back and be grateful. You are tuned into a live reading with Whitney D. The tape cut out again before it returned with the girl lying on the bench next to the hot tub, performing fellatio again, then opening her mouth as Kelly urinated in it and over her breast and stomach before fondling himself and ejaculating. There, the video ended. I hit eject, immediately got in my car and drove the 9 miles to the gray barge-like Sun Times building. Walking straight into city editor Don Hayer's office, he told me Abdom had just left. I caught my partner on his cell phone as he rode the Orange Line to Midway Airport for a flight to Denver. And the rare splurge of a snowboarding weekend with college buddies and his then 15-year-old son. No shit, Alvin repeated several times as I told him about what I'd just seen. No shit. I watched the tape for a second time within 90 minutes with Hayner and my immediate boss, entertainment editor John Barron, in the paper's closet-sized video room full of VCRs and television sets. Hayner and I watched it again half an hour later with the top news executive Michael Cook, this time on the VCR and much larger TV in its spacious office with windows overlooking the Chicago River. The Sun-Times had set a precedent or crossed an ethical Rubicon. If you sided with those who criticized us by giving the first tape to the police and we didn't debate what to do now, Cook and Hayner called Damon Dunn to inform him of what we'd gotten. Someone in the newsroom, I think it was Hayner, but he doesn't recall, called the Special Investigations Unit at CPD and asked them to come to the office. I went outside and had a smoke, a nasty habit I idiotically picked up in the past year at age 37. Less than 4 hours passed between the time I found the tape in my mailbox and when Detective Dan Everett, Sergeant Debbie Shizuki, and a third member of their squad buzzed the intercom at the glass doors between the elevators and the newsroom. John Barron and I met them in the hall and gave them the tape in the manila envelope. Barely saying a word, the investigators left, then came back and buzzed again a few minutes later. Was there a note? Sergeant Shizuki asked. And is this the original tape you got? We assured the officers there wasn't, and it was. A few months later, the Ethics Corner column of the Journalism Trade magazine editor and publisher harshly criticized us for these actions. Columnist Alan Wolper excoriated us and our editor, saying we had forgotten for a moment that newspaper report to the public, not to the police. Stephen Rose also questioned the paper's decision in his media column in Chicago Magazine. Several experts in media ethics say the action by the Sun-Times is dangerous, that there is a risk in a news organization becoming, to use a commonly invoked phrase, an arm of law enforcement, jeopardizing its independence, and the rank in which the prosecution. The Sun-Times responded in a column written by Michael Cook and editorial page editor Steve Huntley, anonymously approved by the rest of the editorial board. We think Rhodes and the critics are missing a few obvious and important points. First, no one subpoenaed or pressured the Sun-Times to give police the video. It was our idea. We did it voluntarily because while sources must be protected, otherwise no one would take their stories to a newspaper. The videotape was not a source. It was a piece of evidence in a criminal investigation that up to that point had been stalled. Second, we do not view crime indifferently. The video showed an adult sexually exploiting a teenage girl and urinating on her. Perhaps Rose and company should talk to a few parents to get a sense of this crime. We agree that we are not a law enforcement agency, but we are citizens, not of some journalistic utopia, but of Chicago. And as such, we try to both publish news and do our civic duty. I never thought we did the wrong thing by handing the tape to police. Neither did Abdom, who was as sickened by the video as I was when he saw it on Monday. Hayner tried to clear the decks for both of us to spend as much time as necessary on the required reporting before he could write about the tape, but we needed to move fast. We didn't know if any other news organization had it. We didn't know how quickly the police would act, and most importantly, we didn't know if the actions it depicted were ongoing with Rashonda or any other young girl, although we certainly feared the worst. Before the police arrived that Friday evening and entertained editor John Barron and I gave them the tape, I made a copy in the paper's video closet. Sometimes lawyer Damon Dunn will groan when he reads that sentence, but it's a fact. We had to do our job to verify and report. After the cops left, I called Sparkle. Hayner had confirmed what I already known, that I had to show her the tape to determine if it was the one she'd seen and if the girl was her niece, Rashonda. Sparkle couldn't come into the office until Monday. So that weekend was one of the longest of my life. I rehearsed as usual on Saturday at noon, playing drums with my punk band Vortis. Then took my daughter to the movies earlier that evening to see Monsters, Inc. I went grocery shopping on Sunday morning, then watched Super Bowl. But only because I had to receive the halftime show on deadline. I hate sports. U2 performed with a melodramatic and bombastic tribute to the victims of 9/11, commenting on the televised music and broadcast spectacles like the Super Bowl and the Grammys, ranked almost among my least favorite tasks as pop music critic. Watching the video with Sparkle the next day stands as the hardest thing I've ever done as a journalist. Early Monday morning, Sparkle walked off the elevator on the third floor of the Sun-Times, a full-on diva, wearing a white fur coat over a glitter purple dress, sporting dark blue eyeshadow and bright lavender lipstick, her long blonde hair flowing down her back. Uncertain about where to find me, the business reporter she met in the elevator led her to the desk I really used in the features department. Pop stars didn't often come into the office, and certainly not dressed as a cutthroat film fatal. Some days here to see you. Somebody's here to see you, Dero, my colleague said. As we headed to the video closet, he silently mouthed, "Wow." While we watched the tape, which was indeed the same one the man who came to the apartment had shown her, Sparkle wasn't a pop star or a diva. She was a weary and sickened 26-year-old named Stephanie Edwards, who grew up singing in the church and who'd seen her dream of a musical career recast as a nightmare. She trembled at times as she spoke. There were no tissues in the video closet. So when she began to cry, I pulled the handkerchief out of my left pants pocket and handed it to her. She laughed. It seemed like a very old-fashioned thing to do, but my stepdad always carried a handkerchief, and since I emulated him in many ways, so did I. I'd had a woman close to me share her story of sexual assault before in college. Then I just listened. Now I had to ask questions. It was my job in a claustrophobic space. While the worst video I've ever seen played for us, I don't think any actress could fake the emotion Sparkle showed about what she saw happening to my heart, her niece, or about the way it had torn her family apart. I mean, the most horrible thing about the tape is when he's relieving himself in her mouth, and I can't even fathom. Sparkle had introduced Rashonda to Kelly when her niece was 12. She reminded me, hoping he'd help her musical career. She clearly felt incredible guilt for that. She repeated that Rashonda looked to be 14 on the tape. Kelly was just shy of or had just turned. Sorry, y'all. Or had just turned 32. She doesn't have her hair like that now. She wears braids now. And by this tape, it looks like she's been doing it longer than 14. It's definitely a plan, a script she's used to. She's like, now I have to do this. Sparkle grew most emotional when talking about how Kelly handed Rashonda money. She is not a fucking whore. I hadn't noticed that when Kelly gave her when I'd watched before. Only that something changed hands. Sparkle asked me to rewind and pointed to the screen. Now I saw the cash. You see that? He's paying her money. That thought made her furious, and she broke down, racked by sobs. He has to stop, Sparkle said when she caught her breath. There have been too many to count. They definitely had to be young. His whole MO, he stated this to me long ago. He likes them when they are ripe and young because he had molded them into what he wants them to be, and control their minds and make them do what women should do. That's what he thinks. You know, be a servant. Be the yes. She's on there calling him daddy. What kind of daddy would do this to their daughter? Of course, I asked Sparkle who she thought brought me the videotape. She said she didn't know. Journalists often say or ask something because they're fishing for a reaction or floating a trial balloon, if you prefer that metaphor. I said, I thought Kelly's ex-manager Barry Hankerson had to be angry about what Kelly had done to his niece, Aaliyah. He was also disgusted by his former client's compulsive to pursue underage girls. He'd asked his lawyer to confirm to me that he'd made that claim in his resignation letter. Did he steer the videotape to me? I don't know, Sparkle said. I'm sure he would tell you. He'd have no problem telling you. Hankerson never did. After Sparkle left on Monday, I called John M. Tohi, Kelly's Chicago-based attorney. Excuse me, y'all. As Hayner and Damon Dunn instructed, I told Tohi, the paper had received a videotape apparently showing Kelly having sexual contact with an underage girl, and the attorney could come to the office to view it and comment. He declined. It was Tahi, whatever. Tahi later wrote, an invitation that I was unable to accept at this time. On Tuesday, Abner and I returned to the modest cream-colored Suco house that we'd first visited 13 months earlier in Oak Park, a village of 52,000 people. Oak Park is actually the 29th biggest city in Illinois. One of quaint storefronts and beautiful turn of the century houses, including 25 designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, whose home and studio were there. It all provides a stark contrast to Chicago's neighboring West Side, immediately across Austin Boulevard. Many of the stores that burned there during the 1968 riots still haven't reopened half a century later. Driving away from Lake Michigan through the west side to Oak Park can feel at times like traveling from a post-apocalyptic landscape to Main Street, USA in Disney World. No one answered the door at the Lanphier home on that trip or during our next two visits. The first on a relatively balmy 30-degree afternoon, and the second that evening when the temperature had plummeted and we stood shivering on the doorstep. The family seemed to have left town. We later learned they'd gone to Europe, ostensibly for a tour for the cause. An R&B group comprised of Rashonda and 3 of her cousins, but they stayed for several months. Rashonda's parents, Greg and Valerie, did not return our calls. They weren't returning calls from family members either, Sparkle said. While racially and economically diverse, the student body at Oak Park and River Forest High School ultimately was as stratified, you see it, as the neighboring communities. On Wednesday, I interviewed several of Rashonda's classmates, filling decidedly creepy as I approached groups of girls carrying their backpacks and giggling when school let out. I found a trio who said they knew Rashonda. She bragged about her friendship with R.Kelly. They said, and the student newspaper had published a photo of Kelly sitting in the bleachers watching her play basketball. The girls had heard about a video on the streets. They and other classmates I later talked.
Butterfly in the sky. I can go twice as high.
Nope. This ain't it. You are tuned into a realistic, unprofessional perspective reading of this book. So that means stumbles, fumbles, and sometimes an occasional mispronunciation of words. So if you are looking for the audible of this book, go buy it yourself. Or feel free to mute me and read on your own. Otherwise, sit back and be grateful. You are tuned into a live reading with Whitney D. About Rashonda, a bubbly teen known for stopping and hugging friends in the halls between classes. She had as many white as black friends, and she was a good though not great student. She loved to listen to all kinds of music, shoot hoops, and hit North Riverside Park Mall after class, especially when the new Air Jordans arrived, so she could be first to wear them to school the next day. Meanwhile, Abdom called a video expert. Slim to none, he said when Abdom asked about the possibility of fabricating such a tape. 26 minutes of putting someone else's head on someone's body. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of hours of frame by frame manipulation to make that work. Digital video didn't start to take off until the mid-1990s, and the ability to edit it on home computers only became widely available in the mid-2000s. Now, on Thursday morning, I called Gerald Margolis, Kelly's celebrity attorney in Los Angeles, and left a message that the Sun-Times sought comment for a story about his star client, an underage girl, and a videotape. John Tohi called me. Any tape you have is fake, and we find the timing of these events to be extremely suspicious, Tohi said of the video he had declined to watch. Asked about the investigation, Tohi said, I would imagine that the police will do their job. Questioned whether he knew if Kelly videotaped his sexual encounters, he snapped at me. I don't think it's any of your business. After the Sun-Times published its first story about the tape, Margolis asked to see it, but the paper's editors and attorneys said it had been a one-time invitation. In a letter dated March 1st, so he wrote that the decision was grossly unfair. He also noted a videotape similar to the one described in Sun-Times article has been available on an internet site. The owner of that site has been widely quoted in the press and also personally stated to us that the videotape he placed on the internet is a fake and that he put it on the internet to demonstrate it is not Mr. Kelly. Abdom and I watched that scene, and indeed it was not R.Kelly. It also was not the video we received. By Thursday evening, Abdom and I had written the final draft of our story. It had been read by Hayner and the copy desk, vetted by Dunn and laid out by the designers. Abdom, Barron, Hayner, and I gathered in a conference room with Hook and Crook, editor Michael Cook, and publisher John Krukenschenk,
And the top bosses read the page proofs. The story did not name Rashonda or Sparkle. Sparkle had talked on the record, but identifying her would mean effectively identifying her niece, an underage rape victim. The story did reveal for the first time that we had received another video a year earlier. The one that came via FedEx, it appeared to show Kelly having sex with a different woman whose age and identity had have not been determined. Based on what police told him that morning about the new tape, Abden wrote. Now, with the video, authorities tell the Sun-Times they are more optimistic about building a case against R.Kelly. At one point, Cook stopped reading and pounded the conference table with the palm of his hand. People do not want to read about urination in their morning paper. The language had become more discreet and less specific with each draft. But I argue that we had to include this specific act. We have to let people know this is not a good time. Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson sex tape, I said, this is different. Cook conceded, but the sentence, the sex included intercourse, fellatio, and urination, only appeared in 30th of 36 paragraphs. When the story ran as the smaller of two on the front page on February 8, 2002, at a week after I received the tape. Chicago police are investigating whether R&B superstar R.Kelly, part of today's opening act at the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, had sex with an underage girl and videotaped the illegal act. A 26-minute, 39-second videotape, which was sent anonymously to the Sun-Times last week, shows the singer-songwriter performing various sex acts with the underage girl. I'm that little bit of hope when my back's against the ropes. I can feel it. I'm the world's greatest. Kelly sang at the Olympics that day. The opening ceremony received the highest Nielsen ratings of any to that point, reaching an estimated 72 million views. According to the New York Times, Kelly belted out his new single from the movie Ali. Another attempt at a rousing anthem like I Believe I Can Fly, complete with a gospel choir. The Olympics were a hell of a news peg, but the timing was accidental. The story was a complicated one, and it hadn't been ready to publish a minute earlier. Kelly spoke to Chicago's NBC affiliate WMAQ before he took the stage in Utah. It's not true, the 35-year-old singer said. All I know is this. I have a few people in the past that I fired. People that I thought were my friends. That's not my friends. It's crap. And that's how we're going to treat it. The reason these things are happening, I really do believe, is because of the fact that I didn't fall back as far as blackmail was concerned. I didn't give them any money. The world is getting ready to watch me sing in a song called The World Greatest. And you got a tape out there trying to ruin my career? I feel like I owe my fans. The videotape story got much more attention than anything Abden and I have reported about Kelly before. Once again, the Associated Press picked it up as the Chicago Sun-Times is reporting, recapping that police were investigating a tape with an underage girl and prominently quoting Kelly's denial. No other news organization locally or nationally forwarded our work or added to the accusations in the weeks that followed, but this time ministries and community activists in Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, Atlanta, and Los Angeles decried the star's behavior. Many black women urged boycotts of stores selling Kelly's music and radio stations playing his songs. Few of those businesses complied. The singer's record label promptly released a one-sentence statement defending one of its biggest hit makers. R.Kelly has been with Jive Records for 11 years, and we fully support him and his music. On March 19, 2002, Kelly released his next album, a collaboration with rapper Jay-Z, The Best of Both Worlds. The disc had the combination marketing muscle of 4 record companies: Jay-Z's boutique label, Rockefeller, and Kelly's Rockland Records, and the larger labels for which the artist recorded, Def Jam and Jive. Sales proved disappointing for a joint effort pairing the biggest stars in hip-hop and R&B. They just sold only 285,000 copies in its first week, at a time when Superstar product still regularly moved 1 million units or more upon release. Although he didn't comment on the video story, Jay-Z distanced himself from Kelly, counseling the planning tour supporting the album. This time, a few of Kelly's peers weighed in, dissing Kelly. Rapper Nas told a concert audience, "We're not up here molesting children. We're not the best of both worlds." Cisco, who scored a hit with the Kelly-like thong song, released a new track with the call out, "The world's greatest, whatever, ain't nothing but a child molester." And multi-platinum producer Dr. Dre shelved a single by his own latest protege, R&B singer Truth Hurts, because it featured a cameo by Kelly. As a member of pioneering gangster rappers NWA, Dr. Dre had a hand in crafting vilely misogynist, y'all see it, tracks, misogynistic tracks. Sorry, y'all. Tracks such as Find 'em, Fuck 'em, and Flee. One Less Bitch and I'd Rather Fuck You. He also had beaten journalist Dee Barnes and tried to throw her down a flight of stairs, according to Rolling Stone. But even he had limits. "I haven't seen the video," Dr. Dre told MTV, "nor do I want to see it, because there's a kid involved. That's why I draw the line." Adam and I continue following every development on the R. Kelly front. Though the winter had into this, through the winter and into the spring. In April 2002, Kelly sold his home in the converted Baptist church on George Street. He purchased it in the fall of 1994, and we believe it was the scene of both videos we'd received. The singer had recently bought a sprawling 22,000 square foot stone mansion in South suburb Olympia Fields for $5 million. He also been impressed by the place when he drove by with his friends. He says in Solar Coaster, all the more so after he learned it had been built by an executive of his favorite restaurant chain, McDonald's. Abdom made an appointment and toured the now empty home on George Street while it was on the market. I laughed when I thought about him in his suit from Ives Discount Men's Warehouse, viewing the place with a real estate agent as if he was a buyer who could afford a $3 million property. I know I couldn't have pulled that off. Now, the listing agent from Coldwell Banker pitched the Red brick building in the Chicago Tribune as a very specialized property that would appeal only to a very narrow segment of the population. The house boasted an indoor lap pool, a wall-sized shark tank, a home movie theater, and a basketball court adorned with a Space Jam inspired mural. It depicted Kelly shooting hoops with the Tasmanian Devil, Michael Jordan refereeing, and Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd sitting in the stands. Foghorn Leghorn also appeared, holding a sign reading "Go R.Kelly." The log cabin playroom interested Abdom the most, and he noted that it came complete with video cameras mounted on a wall and on the ceiling above the hot tub. My sources said Kelly had already built an identical room in his new mansion. Investigators told us they'd toured and scrutinized every inch of the house on George Street, but they were frustrated that Mark Cavins, supervisor of the child sex abuse unit for the Cook County State's Attorney Office, refused to request a warrant for them to do the same at Olympia Fields Mansion. They had hoped to find the clothes Kelly wore in the video. Some thought the state showed too much concern about possible criticisms for harassing a black male superstar and not enough consideration of the young black girl he had victimized. The Landfares still were not cooperating with law enforcement, and they weren't letting investigators near Rashonda. One of them, who'd earlier told me that Greg and Valerie Landfair were ice cold during their initial interviews in 1999 and 2000, said that during the new interviews about the videotape, they thought Greg was on the verge of talking. We kept saying to him, "Man, this is your daughter. You are a father. How can you watch this and not be furious?" But his wife, realizing we were in there with him alone, burst into the room and said, "This conversation is over." And she dragged him out. Wow. So the mama, and y'all know that she that Rashonda is cooperating, and the Illinois trial is going to commence, and they got all the records indicating that the parents were involved. So everybody keep talking about the parents and stuff like that. You're now about to see what is going to happen, and what will happen to a parent that's involved. So I'm excited about this. What up everybody? Welcome to the channel. If you're new, don't be, and I mean that, don't be. Go ahead and click that subscribe button to be a part of the Witness Gang, to join the Witness Nation. Now, I am here to let you guys know we are now accepting members. Let me stop stunning. We've been accepting members, but I'm here to tell you more information about the memberships, okay? It's just better here. Why not become a member and support your girl on a month-to-month basis, okay? Now, we have 4 different tiers that you can choose from. They'll probably be somewhere over here, okay? Not for nothing, we have Out of the Bushes for $1.99 a month, okay? And then you can become a Witness member. $3.99 a month. You can't beat that, okay? Now, if you want to take it up a notch and become a Witness gang member, just $9.99 a month, okay? Now, I see you. You want to go even further. That's great, okay? Become a Witness Nation member at $19.99. Okay, now all these proceeds go back into the channel, okay? I pride myself on doing due diligence to give you guys best quality product and content, okay? So if you love what you see here on Whitney DTV and you want to keep it going, make sure you become a member like right now. like today, like go do it now, okay? Comes with a lot of different perks like members only chats and member only videos and getting updates and exclusive information before anybody does, okay? So what are you waiting for? Go become a member like now. Like right now. Duh. Bye. I continue talking to all the sources I developed, and by late April, 3 months after the Sun Times revealed the existence of the video, some of them had received subpoenas to appear before a grand jury. The star's handlers fully expected an indictment and in an attempt to get in front of it. They arranged for Kelly to give a long interview to journalist Ed Gordon for BET tonight. They intended the conversation to be opening salvo, or an aggressive campaign to minimize the damage to an incredibly lucrative career. By 2019, Kelly would prove to have earned nearly $250 million for himself and a full $1 billion for Jive Records, according to a source who knew the finances. Daryl McDavid, Kelly's accountant turned manager, followed the advice of Los Angeles attorney Gerald Margolis and executives at Jive, not only to retain a top-flight criminal defense attorney in Chicago, but to hire publicist Alan Mayer as well. The public relations battle would be as important as the legal fight, and Variety described Mayer as Hollywood's most prominent crisis specialist. He had even co-authored a book on how to handle celebrity scandals. Spin: How to Turn the Power of the Press to Your Advantage. In his first big job for Kelly, he prepped the singer for the interview with Gordon, who'd been chosen for the exclusive because he'd be tough but fair. Kelly had trouble reading the notes Mayer prepared for him, so he walked the singer through them verbally. Like a lot of people with a disability, they compensate in other ways, Mayer told me. He had an amazing memory. During the interview, which first aired on May 8, 2002, Kelly sat across from Gordon in a luxurious suite in a downtown Chicago hotel, hair neatly braided, beard trimmed, and eyes clear and sharp. Kelly wore a striped charcoal suit jacket over a black sweater vest and a white t-shirt. He looked unnaturally cool for a man risking 15 years in prison and the destruction of everything he spent many of his 35 years building. For part of the interview, the Rev. James Meeks joined Gordon and Kelly. Introduced as the singer's spiritual advisor, Meeks served as pastor of Salem Baptist Church in the Southside's Pullman neighborhood. He was also second in command to the Reverend Jesse Jackson in the Black Communities Activist Rainbow Push Coalition. In America, we're innocent until proven guilty, Meeks said. Rob hasn't been convicted of anything. Rob hasn't been charged of anything. But Ed, I would want the record to read that if he had been convicted and charged, God still has an umbrella big enough for all of us to fit under. Kelly said Meeks supported him while he sought help for a problem he never specified. I've done a lot of things in my life right now that I'm trying to get help for. Two of his handlers told me they forced him to take medication to curb his sex drive. His attorney, Ed Ginson, later confirmed that, saying I had him go to a doctor to get shots, libido killing shots. And he talked to a professional about his sexual addiction and compulsion to pursue young girls. Kelly saw Dr. Carl Bell, Director of Public and Community Psychiatry at the University of Illinois and one of the most respected therapists in Chicago's Black community. Not surprising, given patient confidentiality. Dr. Bell declined to speak to me. Kelly perfectly parrot Mayer's talk and talking point for most of the interview. The singer said he was no angel, but I'm not a monster. He asked fans to have faith in him and to focus on my music. Yes, he admitted he had been thinking a lot about the impact of all this on his family. I'm very concerned about my career, but most of all, I'm concerned about my life. I'm trying to protect my life right now. Then Gordon asked about Aaliyah. It has nothing to do with this, Kelly said. His face registered pain and loss. He seemed on the verge of tears. I really don't think it's fair to. Say anything about Aaliyah. Aaliyah had released her album in July 2001, a self-titled disc that found her once again working with Timbaland, as well as several new producers. That August, she had traveled to the Bahamas to shoot a video for the single Rock the Boat. The morning after completing her scenes, she boarded a charter Cessna 402 with 6 members of the video crew and the pilot for the return trip to Florida. The plane crashed shortly after takeoff, killing everyone on board. Aaliyah was 22. Only a few months after the accident, I had a short but emotional conversation with her mother, Diana Houghton. I gave her my condolences and she thanked me for reporting I done about Kelly. Even though it included revelations about his relationship with her daughter. Everything that went wrong in her life began then, Houghton said, crying. She did not say anything more. The third and final album by Kelly's former protege shot to number 1 on the Billboard Pop Albums chart and ultimately sold more than 2 million copies. Aaliyah had also made a second film, Queen of the Damned, starring as Anne Rice, vampire queen Akasha. It opened 6 months after her death, and although it received lukewarm reviews, it became a cult classic. Kelly's handlers couldn't have been happier with the way he fielded the Aaliyah question. You're too hurt to talk about her and too respectful of her family to get into all that again. They'd advised, but another tactic backfired. When Abdom and I first broke news of the tape, they began suggesting to anyone who'd listen that their client's former manager, Barry Hankerson, and an artist who split from him, Sparkle, were using it to blackmail him. At the Olympics, Kelly himself had blamed the tape on people in the past that I fired. His handler suggested that Hankerson and Sparkle were angry. They wouldn't be making any more money with Kelly. The star having sexual contact with the nieces they loved and other underage girls couldn't possibly have been a motive to make the tape public. Instead, it was all about money. The operative theory by the people around Rob, one of Kelly's handlers told me years later, was that Rob and Barry had a bad falling out over Aaliyah, but what really pushed Barry over the edge about really wanting to destroy Rob was that Aaliyah died and the guilt he felt. even though Rob had nothing to do with that. Obviously, Barry had a lot of guilt about that whole thing because he had pushed the two of them together initially. He may not have been expecting the way that it turned out, but he knew Rob pretty well. As screwed up as Rob was, and as Byzantine as all that psychology was, I think Barry's psychology is equally Byzantine. Anyways, he knew that Rob was enormously talented and that he was a real meal ticket, and he had sensed that Aaliyah had it too. He put them together, and yeah, don't worry about the other stuff. When the BET interview touched on this alleged conspiracy to blackmail and bring him down, Kelly shifted uneasily in his chair, caught off guard and unprepared. You had said that you believe that there is a smear campaign out against you, Gordon began. That you think people are out to get you. Who is they? Well, I'm gonna be very honest. Now, Kelly talked quickly and stumbled over his words. I know a lot of things that, unfortunately, I just can't discuss because I can't get on TV claiming this person or that person. I just can't say names and who's doing this to me. You have in the past mentioned your former agent, though, Gordon said, referring to Hankerson, Kelly's ex-manager. Yes, I have, Kelly said. He began fidgeting nervously with his hands and blinking a lot. Gordon named him Barry Hankerson, and your suggestion is that he was behind some of this? Do you believe that he is behind any of this smear campaign? Well, you know what? That's something I have to let my lawyers handle, Kelly said. He looked frightened. My lawyers are handling that, and looking into that, and unfortunately, man, like I said, I'm biting my teeth here. I wish that I could say a lot of things because I owe it to my fans. That's why I'm here. I owe it to people. I owe it to my family and myself to be here, and I'm making a big step to be here and talk about this. It's just that I'm doing it with a hand behind my back. I can't say a lot of things, unfortunately, and I apologize for that. But I hope that people understand how the legal thing goes, especially when you're a celebrity. The first thing they do is tell you you can't say anything. I'm not even supposed to be here talking about it, but I just feel I have to say something. Gordon didn't stop. I mentioned Barry Hankerson only in the sense that you had mentioned him publicly before. There's been no word that an old protege you interviewer was about to name Sparkle when Kelly nervously interjected. I never said Barry Hankerson. You tell me. Okay. Sorry, y'all. You tell me if you said this, Gordon said. He proceeded to read part of a quote from a radio interview Kelly had given, which actually didn't name Hankerson. Gordon, quoting from Kelly's own interview, read, "I've got an ex-manager on my back. People are trying to make money off my music and my name in a very, very negative way. I've been blackmailed for the last 4 years. I didn't give in. I'm still not going to give in. A lot of people are very jealous of me and they're trying to destroy me." Gordon looked up from the transcript he just read and stared at Kelly. "Did you not mean Barry Hankerson there?" Well, like I said, because of the legal thing, I can't just name names, Kelly said. He has started to sweat. I've had a lot of managers in the past, but right now I can't say this man's name. I wish that I could. Believe me, I wish that I could. The human, just the regular guy robber wants to, but if I'm paying lawyers to clear this and make sure I'm okay and all that, then I have to follow some advice. Less than a month later, on the afternoon of June 4th, State's Attorney Dick Devine told Sun-Times editor Michael Cook that indictments against Kelly would be announced the following day. Abdul and I broke the scoop that morning, scoring for the first time the prime place on the page one or the wood in newspapers, Jarden, and antiquated even then. The indictment charged Kelly with 21 counts of making child pornography, 7 counts of videotaping each specific sex act, 7 counts of producing the video for each specific sex act, and 7 counts of soliciting an underage partner for each specific sex act. He faced a prison term of up to 15 years and a fine of $100,000 if convicted. While police and other family members who were cooperating with the investigation grew impatient for prosecution to charge Kelly, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office took months, it said, trying to make sure it had an ironclad case. Adam wrote, prosecutors were haunted by a case 14 years ago when they had a similar uncooperative witness who had been taped having sex with a man when she was underage. This was before the Mel Reynolds case. Prosecutors charged him anyway, and he was acquitted. Adam and I attended the standing room only press conference on the afternoon of June 5th at CPD headquarters, 3510 South Michigan Avenue. Top city and state law enforcement officials crowded the podium, and after Chicago Police Superintendent Terry Hillard introduced them all, he said he wanted to provide some background. We're here today to announce the indictment of Chicago-based singer R.Kelly. Back in February, the Chicago Sun-Times contacted the Chicago Police Department to tell us of a tape they received that features R.Kelly performing sex acts with a minor. The Sun-Times provided a copy of the tape to us. Sitting at the left end of the fourth row, Abdul and I winced. We'd been hoping the lead would be that a video provided evidence leading to an indictment after a long police investigation of Kelly's sexual contact with underage girls. Fuck, Abdul whispered. They're making this about us. They also were making it all about one teenage girl on one videotape, with nothing about the pattern of behavior we reported. It's unfortunate to see Mr. Kelly's talents go to waste, but make no mistake, these acts are serious crimes, Superintendent Hillard said. Anyone who is selling this tape, as well as anyone who has purchased it, is now in possession of child pornography. It would be my advice to dispose of these tapes. Like their elevator tapes, bootlegged copies of the one with Rashonda had begun to appear to sell on streets. State's Attorney Dick Devine said the tape had been authenticated by the FBI crime lab in Quantico, Virginia. And experts there concluded it was not a forgery. Sexual predators are a scourge on society. This indictment should send a clear message that illicit acts with minor children will not be tolerated in the community. At the start of the press conference, an aide from Devine's office had handed a 2-page press release and a copy of the 24-page indictment to every reporter. Abdom and I couldn't believe it, but Rashonda Landfield's name had not been redacted. The names of underage victims and rape victims of any age almost always are withheld by law enforcement. Another reporter pointed out the error, and the panic aide collected all the documents she just distributed, then rushed to make new copies with Rashonda's name crossed out with a black marker. I wondered if that would have happened with the name of a white girl from Lakeview or the North Shore suburbs. As soon as we see Mr. Kelly, he'll be placed in handcuffs. We're not going to treat R.Kelly any different than anybody else. Chicago Chief of Detectives Phil Klein said he announced that a warrant had been issued that morning for the star's arrest, and the officials took questions, most of them filled by Lieutenant Robert. Oh gosh, these names. Hargeshmere, head of the Special Investigations Unit. Many of the questions from our fellow journalists who hadn't seen the tapes centered on what it showed. We're not going to comment on that, came the reply again and again. The same response greeted inquiries about whether the 14-year-old victim was cooperating in the investigation. After 10 minutes, I couldn't keep quiet, though. Abdom elbowed me that I shouldn't say anything to tip off our competitors. We can ask that. We can ask later. Ignoring him, and with my Sony Pressman cassette recording rolling, I asked if anyone at the podium knew whether the girl and her family had signed a non-disclosure agreement with Kelly. I am not aware of that, Lieutenant Hargeshmere said. I said the Sun-Times had reported that Kelly was accused of statutory rape in 3 civil lawsuits by underage girls, that he'd settled those claims by paying the girls in exchange for non-disclosure agreements, and that he'd married Aaliyah under a falsified Cook County marriage certificate when she was underage. Was the state looking into the possibility of charges in those cases? Our investigation, what we're talking about today, deals with the tape, Hargeshmere said. Now, Abdom piped up. In the general law, is it harder to prove a sex crime charge than a child pornography charge? State's Attorney Devine replies that it depends on the evidence that we have. We take each case as it comes. I posed the latest question before the press conference ended. Given that the tape was widely available for sale across the country, did Kelly face federal charges? I asked. Devine grinned and said, you'd have to ask the U.S. Attorney after that. Abdom did several times in the coming weeks, and a spokesperson for U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald declined to comment. In the years since, I have heard that federal authorities wanted to take over the case, but Illinois prosecutors did not want to cede it to them. Abdom and I rushed back to the newspaper where Don Hayner already had 3 of our colleagues working on sidebars. And Sweeney wrote a story headline, Tower Records pulls Kelly porn tapes. They had still been selling the one I bought there on DVD, R.Kelly Bump and Grind. You be the judge, which showed the scenes with Montina Woods and the other partner neither we nor law enforcement ever identified. The retail chain was not selling the Rashonda tape. Another story led with the Rev Jackson warned Wednesday against rushing to judgment against R. Kelly. The famous activist told reporter Julie Patel, there are other greater issues in the world. Mary Holohan interviewed people in the street, quoting 3 women and 1 man who said they weren't surprised by the charges. She also talked to programmers. At Chicago radio stations dance pop oriented B96 FM pulled Kelly's music from its playlist, but the station only played his big pop hits and he didn't have a new one at the moment. The 3 top R&B stations kept the singer in heavy rotation. He's innocent until proven guilty, said Marv Dyson, general manager of both WGCI and V103. Hold on one second, y'all. He's innocent until proven guilty, said Marv Dyson, general manager of both WGCI and V103. Over the past 2 days, at my editor's request, I'd written a contextual story on famous cases of pop stars and underage girls. These included Elvis Presley and his 14-year-old bride, Priscilla Beaulieu, Jerry Lee Lewis and his 13-year-old second cousin and third wife, Myra Gale Brown, Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page, who first had sexual contact with Lori Maddox when she was 14, and Marvin Gaye, who met Janice Hunter when she was 17 and married her after divorcing his first wife, Anna Gordy. Hunter later claimed Gaye abused her and forced her to participate in threesomes against her will. None of the infamous cases charted in my story can be excused, and there are plenty of others, but Kelly's behavior was of a different magnitude. The groupies of the old age who have gone to write their autobiographies and become famous are pretty different than a 14-year-old girl who is being urinated on by a 35-year-old man. The New York Times music critic Ann Powers told me, and the girl on the tape was not the only one Abdom and I had written about. After the press conference, I started writing the main story about the indictments for page 1, while Abner made calls to nail down the details of an AP News alert. Kelly had been arrested in Polk County, Florida, shortly after 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition to the new mansion he owned in Olympia Fields, Kelly rented 2 vacation homes in Davenport, Florida. 35 miles southwest of Orlando, he used one of those houses as a recording studio and hangout for his crew, while the second was home for his wife, Andrea, their children, and their nanny. Andrea was in the hospital having just given birth to the couple's 3rd child, a son named Robert Jr. When Lieutenant Harkenschmier advised Florida officers of the warrant for Kelly's arrest. Polk County Sheriff's deputies immediately went to his addresses in Davenport. They arrested him without incident while he sat in a van outside one of the houses. Deputies then led him in a plastic zip cuffs to a substation in Winter Haven where 15 fans had gathered. "We love you, R.Kelly!" they shouted as reporters and photographers moved in. "I love you," Kelly said. He turned to the media. "Not right now, guys." He arrived wearing white Nike gym shoes, a blue Nike sweatshirt, blue sweatpants, and a denim bucket hat, Abdom noted. The arrest made headlines worldwide. Most of the stories reported that Kelly had been in Florida with his wife and children, the first time his family garnered widespread mention in the media. The AP talked to some of the neighbors in Davenport who said Kelly hadn't caused any problems, but full-time residents disliked anyone who rented rather than owned. Next time is it going to be a terrorist there they've let in here? One homeowner asked. Abdom emailed me another paragraph of color as my features writing class in journalism school called it. Kelly was issued the standard orange gel jumpsuit and placed in a private cell. He arrived too late for the 4:30 p.m. dinner. I just finished adding that to our story when Hayner told us at Jensen, the Star's new high-powered criminal defense attorney had just called his second press conference of the day. Jensen had not informed anyone from our paper about the first session held not long after law enforcement's presser at police headquarters. We later read in the tribe that the first time he met with reporters to assert Kelly's innocence, Jensen angrily vowed, "I'll talk about the Sun Times another day soon." The copy desk extended our deadline, and Abdom and I hurried to Jensen's office in the Monadnock building, an ornate 16-story tower in the Loop designed by celebrated architects Daniel Burnham and John Root. Jensen's dark wood panel office had already filled with reporters when we arrived. The 60-year-old attorney directed camera crews where to stand while he repositioned photos of his family on his desk to ensure they'd be seen on television. A source in the Kelly camp later told me the lawyer charged the singer $750 an hour. Portly beard and bespectacle with a famous mop of unruly, sandy blonde hair. Jensen was called a mob lawyer by everyone on the Chicago legal scene. He embraced that description, telling AP reporter Mike Robson, "I have no aversions to organized crime." Jensen masked a quick intellect and killer instinct with a bumbling, disheveled persona, evoking Boscoki's Porphyry Petrovic, and Peter Fox Colombo, suffering from dystonia, a neurological disorder. He sometimes rode a motorized scooter and sometimes limped with a cane. The cane now sat front and center, propped against his desk. He told an interviewer years ago He deliberately used his disability to make jurors feel sorry for him, Robertson wrote. Now, he says he didn't really mean it. Raised in Chicago courtrooms where his father worked as a bail bondsman, Jensen defended crooked politicians in addition to mobsters, but he said he tried to avoid sexual misconduct cases. I just don't like to be in a case where I have to cross-examine a woman victim, he said. I feel bad for them. He and his close friend, Sam Adams Sr., had nevertheless defended Rep. Mel Reynolds when the congressman was tried for having sexual contact with an underage campaign worker. Reynolds was convicted, and Abdom thought that the debacle would have dissuaded Kelly, but the singer had hired Jensen and Adams Sr. as soon as he learned indictments were coming. Jensen thought he'd struck a gentleman agreement with the state for how his new famous client would turn himself in. When the cameras started rolling, he railed around what he called the grave injustice of Kelly being arrested in front of his home while his wife and children watched. Apparently, even Jensen didn't know Andrea was in the hospital with a newborn. Idiot. 35 years, and I've never had a state's attorney do this when you offered to bring somebody in. We're talking about a child pornography case where the person they are alleging is the victim of a child pornography says it didn't happen. I've never had an agreement like this breached. I don't know whether it's his race. I don't know whether it's his celebrity, but we were double-crossed. I asked Jensen if he was seeing the girl on the tape, told the grand jury it wasn't her. The law requires that grand jury testimony remain secret and be backtracked. But for the first time, I know who the victim is, and she said it didn't happen. I remembered that Abdom had been asking him if Kelly had sexual contact with the victim for several weeks. I've been reticent to I've been resistant to talk about it because I didn't think it was appropriate, Jensen said, changing the subject. I'm not the one who put the victim's name in the indictment. They did. It's illegal, as I understand it. Had the girl signed a non-disclosure agreement with Kelly? I asked. No, I don't even know what that is, Jensen ranted some more about the state not honoring the deal he thought he struck for Kelly to turn himself in, and he protests this steep bond of $750,000. Any ordinary person indicted for child pornography would have been freed on a $100 bond or a $200 bond. I remember thinking, what kind of ordinary person is indicted for child pornography? But I didn't pose that question. Before the gentleman's agreement fell apart, Jensen said Kelly's spiritual advisor, the Rev. James Meeks, planned to drive the singer back to Chicago because he hated to fly. Abdom and I hadn't known about Kelly's aviophobia before this. I asked for clarification since the Sun-Times had reported that Kelly flew to Florida after the wedding with Aaliyah. Jensen erupted. "Stop playing these games! Look, I'm a criminal lawyer. I'm not a press relations person. You write your column about music. I'm talking about a criminal case and people who misrepresent themselves to me. As a matter of fact, and this is really gonna kill you. I'm 60 years old and I have no idea who Aaliyah is. Let's talk about this case. She denies she was on the tape and denies she ever had sex with him. Wow, I didn't know you could be such an asshole at press conference, Abdom said as we cabbed back to Sun Times. I told him I'd had a lot of experience back in Jersey. Kelly spent the night of June 5th in jail in Bartow, Florida, and Jensen flew there to represent the singer in a Polk County courtroom the next afternoon. The star was led into court in an orange jail uniform, hands cuffed and moist eyes downcast. Judge Carla Foreman Wright agreed to let him return to Chicago in his own recognizance, Lord, but warned you're not to have contact with minor children, not related by blood or marriage. Do you understand? Kelly quickly answered, yes, ma'am. Earlier the next morning, he and Jensen flew into Midway Airport on South Side aboard a rented private jet, then climbed into a silver Lexus. The luxury SUV pulled up to the Cook County Criminal Court building at West 26th Street and South Carolina Avenue, part of the sprawling legal complex that also includes Cook County Jail, and which most Chicago reporters, prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, and their regular clients simply call 26 and Cal. When Kelly emerged from the Lexus in front of the waiting crowd of press, Detective Dan Everett of the Special Investigations Unit read the singer his rights, placed him in cuffs for the second time in 24 hours, and put him in the back of an unmarked squad car. Before he could post bail, Kelly had to be fingerprinted and photographed. He was taken to CPD's Marquette District headquarters, one of the police department's Hill Street Blues era relics from 1926, Abdom wrote, with marble stairs, mosaic, hexagonal tiles, and not enough space for a celebrity. His legal team, his spiritual advisor's driver, and dozens of reporters and cameramen. Kelly then returned to the courthouse to appear before a judge for his release on $750,000 bond. He paid with $750 bills. Kelly smiled on his way out of court and told reporters he looked forward to proving his innocence. Standing at his side, Reverend Meeks said he was counseling and praying with the singer. They discussed turning the direction of his music around, looking at other themes other than sex. Meeks said, then they climbed into the silver Lexus and drove to Salem Baptist Church in the Pullman neighborhood. There, Kelly sang for 50 children and their parents at a kindergarten graduation ceremony. What the hell? Apparently, the Chicago Tribune reported the no association with minors stipulation applied to the Florida bond only. Child, I know you lying. The star continued singing over the next few weeks, hunkering down at Chicago Track. In early July, Jive Records Rush released a single, Heaven, I Need a Hug, after Kelly first gave it exclusively to WGCI. Elroy Smith, the station's program director, told me that within 90 minutes of its first airing, it became the station's most requested song. The lyrics take the form of a letter to Kelly's dead mother, Joanne. Ever since you left, your baby boy's been dealing with problem after problem. Tell me, what am I supposed to do? Over a mid-tempo groove with lush orchestration and a guitar part credited to Rashonda's father, Greg Lanfair. After playing on 3 of Kelly's albums, this would be his last named appearance on the singer's recordings. Kelly takes aim at disloyal former associates in the press. Get rid of them clowns and get myself a whole nother crew. Media, do your job, but please just don't make my job so hard. Finally, he builds to a climatic finale, repeated 3 times. Heaven, I need a hug. Is there anybody out there willing to embrace a thug? Feeling like a change of heart, and all I really need is a sign or a word from God. So shower down on me, wet me with your love. Given the most notorious scene in the videotape, the so-called golden shower that became fonder for jokes and gossip soon after Adam and I first reported on it. The last line of the song seemed bizarre. I know Robert, and he knows exactly what he's doing, a former associate told me. He's smarter than everyone thinks, and what he's doing is he's fucking with all of us. Chapter 8, Victory by Delay. And this is where we stop, and we will conclude either this afternoon, either this evening or next week, okay? I will have to come to some kind of decision here soon, okay? But not for nothing, you guys. Tell me what y'all think, okay? This reading was disgusting, to say the least. Hearing the portrayal of the video, and like I said, when I was younger, I saw the video. I did. Somebody through the neighborhood gave it to me, and I was just like, okay, so I popped it in, and it was him. It was him. And I saw the girl dancing and rolling and stuff like that. I saw the urination, her peeing and stuff. I was like, what the hell is she doing? I wasn't accustomed to watching pornography, whether it be young or old. I was young myself, probably even her age, if not, like a year or so older than her. But I remember it was in high school when I received it. So, I saw that and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, but it's disgusting to hear. But to hear the steps that Sparkle took, I commend her, you know what I'm saying? And it's just, I don't know, this is very sickening and just disturbing, to say the least. But I don't know, y'all tell me what y'all think in the comments down below. I'll be coming to you guys live tonight, either with a read or with something further. Okay, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. While you're there, make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Okay, sharing is caring, so make sure that you take out the time to share this video. Okay, and if you have not, consider joining the channel. Okay, comes with lots of great perks. I'm going to start implementing here soon when it comes to members only chats and members only videos. Okay, so not for nothing, thank you guys so very much for tuning in to Whitney D TV. I am She, and I am signing off. Thank you guys so very much, and have a wonderfully blessed and safe day. Bye.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high.
Nope, this ain't it. You are tuned into a realistic, unprofessional perspective reading of this book. So that means stumbles, fumbles, and sometimes an occasional mispronunciation of words. So if you are looking for the audible of this book, go buy it yourself, or feel free to mute me and read on your own. Otherwise, sit back and be grateful. You are tuned into a live reading with Whitney D.